Hi guys, so we've done quite a few videos over the last few days. Obviously I've done some personal ones and we've done a few concepts. The last concept video we did was the Passion Fit version of goal setting, the way that we go about setting goals. And I talked personally a little bit yesterday around accomplishment and how you can, how I'm still staying accomplished and how we're trying to keep the guys in our community feeling accomplished during this difficult time where a lot of you may have lost your meaning and your why. Probably a lot of you are feeling quite or finding it quite difficult to stay motivated at the moment, and that's perfectly understandable when you're going through all of this change. So what I want to talk about today is something, again, that's a little unique to us at Passion Fit, something that we've been putting together over the last 18 months, it's called the Accomplishment Pyramid, and it's tried to help you people understand, coaches understand the processes they might be going through that lead to their accomplishments, and which parts of those processes that they have control over, which ones they don't, and how they might be able to identify how or which part of the process is perhaps impacting on them not feeling accomplished, and therefore be able to make decisions about what they can change. So effectively it's a process, it's a set of sequential elements to your life that impact on each other and ultimately lead to whatever you accomplish, good and bad, and then how you learn from that. So right at the bottom of the pyramid are two things, and these kind of form the foundation of your life, I guess. Oops, to bear with me and my poor writing skills. So your experiences in your environment kind of lay down the foundation of the whole of your life, really. So your everything you experience in your life, everything you're part of, the physical environment you're part of, lay the foundation. That's everything that happens to you through your lifetime. And obviously everybody's experiences, environments are different. Now some people can experience the same experience environment. It can lead to a different set of other behaviours within the rest of the process, but often these have quite a big bearing on the rest of it. They sort of underpin the whole thing. Now, your experiences in your environment tend to drive your beliefs. So your beliefs, the things that you believe in, that looks like beliefs, so no, beliefs, it is beliefs, tend to be driven by your experience environment. So the way that you see the world is often driven by these two things. So for example, how you're brought up is really critical to how your beliefs are formed later on in life. We know that nature plays a big part, but also nurture plays a huge part. And I've personally been, a first-hand recipient of somebody whose experience environment changed them dramatically. And personally too, my experience environment in my childhood changed my beliefs quite a lot. And it's taken me a long time to realign those beliefs in a more positive way. Okay, and your beliefs then tend to drive your values. So the things that you believe in tend to drive your values. So the way that you behave, or the way that you think that you should behave, I guess, is your values. Let's take an example of like children. Children believe in Father Christmas because we teach them to believe in Father Christmas. And the fact they believe in Father Christmas means that they think it's important that they behave well in the build up to Christmas. So their values in terms of how they should act, I guess, what's right and wrong, are driven by their belief in Father Christmas existing. I guess that's a good way of explaining perhaps an extreme version of how beliefs drive values. And then your values tend to drive your mindset and the way that you think cognitively. So your mindset is often driven by your values. So your values drive your mindset in any given circumstance or situation. Now obviously you have probably, you could argue that you've started to as you move up the pyramid, in some ways you've got a little bit more control over things. So your mindset, the way that you think, so your cognitive thinking, is something that you can program a little bit more and you can make more conscious choices about. It can be difficult to control your experiences environment, especially as a child, and obviously a good example again there is someone might be who's in an abusive relationship can find it very difficult or a toxic relationship to control their experience environment. At the moment, we're not in control of our experiences, our environment, as much as we normally would be. There's a lot of toxic behaviour around the world at the moment, and that can be having quite a big impact on people. So, it's quite interesting what's happening at the moment in those areas. But the way that you think is something you do have a little bit more control over. Now, it's not easy, and for example, if you've had CBT like I have, the idea there is that you learn how to control your mindset a little bit better when other things that you maybe can't control are affecting it, if that makes sense. So your mindset is the next part, which is driven largely by your values. And obviously these things are a bit interchangeable, so sometimes the way that you think can drive your values, etc., etc. But this is a sort of an example of things that I've personally experienced, and I've used this model on myself, with myself, to help me improve my feeling of accomplishment. Okay, so next is the goals that you set yourself in life. So the things that you aspire to do, the things you aspire to achieve are often driven by the way that you think. So the things that you think about life, the choices, the thought patterns you have drive your goals. So there you form your goals based on the way that you tend to think about life. Off the back of your goals, because you've got goals, then you have to make choices. So the goals that you have tend to drive your choices. Now, again, these two things can be interchangeable. Sometimes the choices can end up leading to goals, obviously. But fundamentally, the goals that you have as a result of the way that you see the world and you feel about the world often will drive the choices that you then make, because you'll make choices that hopefully lead you towards your goals. Then your choices obviously lead directly to actions. So the choices that you make then lead to the actions that you actually take, and the actions that you take ultimately lead to your accomplishments, if I can fit this in the box, which I won't be able to probably. So all the actions that you take ultimately will lead to your accomplishments. Now, some of your accomplishments might be ideal, and some of them might be suboptimal. So they might not have been what you wanted them to be. Now, there's a saying, isn't there, that we're either winning or we are learning. And I guess that the reality is that regardless of whether the accomplishments are ideal or they're suboptimal, they still then feed directly back into your experiences environment, because the outcomes that you see in life ultimately are then new experiences, or may create a physical environment or an emotional environment that then feeds back into the process. So you can not necessarily just see this as a cycle, a pyramid. You could see it as a whole cycle, starting perhaps with your experiences in environment and feeding all the way through. So this is something that I personally, I put it together for myself to help me to understand how my mind worked, how I went about setting goals, making decisions, what was driving those, because I had a slightly complicated past up until my sort of late teens, early 20s, and in my 20s I would say that my beliefs and values were pretty misplaced, and I had to learn to change my behaviours, and despite my experience of environment, I needed to work out how to do that. And as I got into my 30s and 40s, certainly in my 30s, I did have some external support to help me with that. Personally, I found that that didn't work very well for me. So I went about trying to formulate a way of developing myself and improving the way that I saw the world, and the value that I added to both myself and those around me. And ultimately it led to me coming up with this. Now, there will be other models out there that possibly connect to this, link into it. And there are other models that other people may find really, really useful. But for me, this is quite important. And at the moment, we talk a lot about meaning and people losing motivation and losing their why. And obviously, you can't control your experiences environment, but some of these other steps within the pyramid, you do have some conscious control over. So, just because your experience environment aren't, in your control at the moment, doesn't mean that you can't change your values. And as a result of the values that you have, you can still, set a certain level, a certain type of mindset, set new goals, make different choices, take actions that will lead to hopefully ideal accomplishments. Now, some of the accomplishments might be suboptimal because you can't control the environment, in terms of what you'd ideally want. But it doesn't mean that you can't feel, accomplished. You can't find your why, and you can't stay motivated. So for athletes out there, if the absence of a race is leaving you demotivated, personally, I would ask yourself the question, or revisit your why. I would question, if I was your coach, your why. So if a race is the only thing that keeps you motivated to do stuff, to train, to feel like you've got meaning and value, then you may have things wrong the rest of the time. I don't know, that may be different for everybody, but personally, the absence of racing hasn't caused me to lose my why. I've found different whys, different levels of meaning, and I'm still feeling super motivated, not just to train, but also to not train when not training is a better decision. And I'm not training as much as I normally would at the moment because I feel motivated to do my part to support the crisis, stay healthy, stay fit, stay focused, stay positive. And for me, a little bit less training is helping me do that. A little bit less training, a little bit more sleeping, etc., is making sure that I can add more value in different ways because my environment has now changed. So if the absence of a race is leaving you demotivated, guys, then think about what else can you focus on at the moment that can make you motivated. And if racing is the only thing that motivates you to train, then maybe you haven't quite got that why strong enough in the first place anyway. That's not necessarily the case. I certainly don't want to be judgmental about that with people, but for me, certainly, if I was demotivated just because I didn't have a race, I would have some serious concerns about my deeper why and the deeper meaning I had for racing. So there we go, guys. If you want to ask any questions about that, pop us a message. Yeah, there we go. That's the accomplishment pyramid that we often use at Passion Fit. Take care.